SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. Des Hasler and David Fifita hate each other. Fans hate the rugby league. I think the best quote I heard from this weekend is the league is incapable of getting anything right except putting on rugby league games.
Yeah, morning, John. Yeah, the Titans are in all sorts of trouble. Big spot of bother. 5 straight losses now. And the pressure's building on the coach, Des Hasler.
This is his second year, right?
Yeah, it is his second year, yep. So they had a disappointing year in his first season. They only won 8 games of their 24 games. And they bombed out last season, and I guess it's sort of like a bit of an unspoken rule among coaches is that by the second year you want to see some improvement. You get a year of latitude, and then the second year you need to see that the team are going better than they were when the coach took over. Yeah. And that just hasn't happened with the Titans. So, I think fair enough that he dropped David Fifita. It was an interesting story that came out during the week. Where David Fifita wanted to play on the other side of the field, and then he said that to Des Hasler, and Des Hasler said, no, I'm backing Bo Firma in that position. If you want to play, I think Firma's on the left side. He said, if you want to play on the left side, you can go and play in Queensland Cup, and that's how it happened.
Well, Bo Firma's been their best player.
Yeah,
I'd say or close to their best player all year. So
yeah.
The Titans have a whole bunch of issues, and taking one of your best players out of their position to put David Fifita, who hasn't had the best form or really paid for himself in the time he's been there, I thought it was that's a fair call.
Yeah, I think Des Hasler, certainly was in his rights to do that, and I think Hasler used that as an opportunity to make a statement to go, no, you don't run this team, I run this team, and we need to go in a different direction here. Now, there's been a lot of criticism of David Fifita. I think Willie Mason said on his podcast, Fifita, what the F are you doing? And I think that's fair enough. I just find when you watch David Fifita play, like he just looks like he really doesn't want to be there. Everything he does is just completely half-assed. I've noticed that with David Fifita.
Yeah.
He doesn't put in. He doesn't play to his potential. He doesn't run with any intent whatsoever. He just really looks like he doesn't want to be there. And I think Des Hasler has taken the opportunity to make a statement to his players here.
If the Parramatta had a this week, though, then the Titans would be on the bottom of the table, and they're now in danger of both the teams have got what is it? They've both got 2 wins for the year, 6 wins for the year, 2 wins for the year. They're both on 6
I think
points.
so. Yeah, the Titans actually lost the first game to the Bulldogs, but then they lost 2 in a row. Sorry, then they won 2 in a row, and then since then they've lost 5 on the trot.
They both had played 8 games. They've both that's right, because they had the bye the first round. They both won 2 games, so they're both on 6 points, and they're only sitting above the Eels on points differential right now. So, as you said, you don't see any improvement in them, and in fact, they might slide backwards. You'd have to say that Des Hasler's, I'd say that's his career.
I think he had a great start. Des Hasler, I did do a column on our website too. Yesterday, I did. So had a great start. Won those 2 premierships with Manly in 2008 and 2011. He made another grand final at Manly. in 2007. And then he won a minor premiership in his first year at the Bulldogs in 2012, made the grand final that year, made the grand final again in 2014. So in the 8 seasons between 2007 and 2014, he made 5 grand finals with his 2 clubs at that stage. Between 2005 and 2016, he made 12 straight finals appearances with his teams. But it just seems like since then that the magic dust has worn off. He had a bad last year at the Bulldogs in 2017. They bombed out completely. He got sacked. And then he had very mixed fortunes in his second stint at Manly, 2 finals appearances, but 2 years where they didn't make the finals, got sacked from that job as well. And so this Titans job, I think, was basically the last stand of his coaching career. And if that fails, which at the moment it looks like it will, I think that's going to be the end of his NRL coaching career.
He does have history suing his previous clubs as well, so it's going to be one of those things where...
Yeah, well, clubs will go, well, this guy's just not going to be worth...
Yeah.
I mean, if someone's going to be that high maintenance, they've got to be winning a lot. Yeah. And once they stop winning, clubs... That's the double-edged sword, and that's... Look, I'm sure Des Hasler will be fine. I'm sure he's got plenty of money put away. If he has to retire right now, I'm sure he'll be fine. But that's the double-edged sword of how he was behaving, of taking clubs to court all the time is, well, if you're going to be that difficult for clubs to handle, to deal with, well, then once you stop winning, clubs are going to give you the cold shoulder, and that's what's going to happen, and he's going to have to put up with that.
Yeah, and it's actually really funny because we're 1/3 of the way through the season.
Excuse me, sorry.
Bless you. The Titans are still only 2 points behind 10th.
Yeah.
So it's like, but just the quality of football they're playing and how they look doesn't look like they're going to get off the bottom of that ladder. Yeah. It's also tied with the Dolphins and the Panthers, which is just super weird.
Yeah. I mean, things can turn around, that's for sure, but a player like David Fifita is just infuriating, and he brushed the Roosters and he brushed the Panthers. Maybe a player like him needed to go to one of those clubs who, traditionally get the best out of their players. But I feel like he took the easy option, staying at the Titans, staying at a club that doesn't have a winning culture, doesn't have a culture of success. I feel like he's taken the easy option there and gone, I'm going to take the easier money here. I feel like that's a club where there's not a lot of accountability. It's now one of 4 Queensland clubs. It's probably, of all the 4 Queensland clubs, it's probably the Queensland club that's the least cared about, I would have thought. I think obviously the Broncos are the highest profile team. The Cowboys obviously have a strong presence in North Queensland. And then you got the Dolphins as the new team, but the Titans sort of fall in this category of, no one really cares about them. And I feel like maybe some of their players take advantage of that and just, they just sort of lounge around on the soft money there. Yeah. If Fifita had been playing for a Sydney club, I think he would have been under the gun a lot more. I feel like he's been allowed to get away with subpar performances for a long time because of the club he's playing at.
And get paid overs for it as well.
Yeah, you get paid overs for it. It's a holiday. That's the thing. It's a holiday destination. It's not, it's known as being a holiday destination where people go to get drunk and go to the beach, basically. And their football team sort of reflects that in a way. It's the if you're an NRL player who wants to just lounge around and, get on the drink and go to the beach, well, that's the club that you go to. The lifestyle on the Gold Coast reflects the football club as well, I think.
Exactly.
In a lot of ways.
It is but who'd want the job? That's one of the things, right? Des Hasler, if he doesn't go well and gets sacked, there's a bunch of coaches out there, new young coaches and things like that, that'll take the job, but who'd want it?
Oh, yeah, well, somebody will take it, but it's not going to go to an in-demand coach or anything. It's going to go to a coach who's just looking for a start. Yeah. It'll have to be, most likely it'll have to be a rookie coach who can't get a gig anywhere else.
Kevin Walters.
Kevin Walters?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Somebody like that, that kind of coach.
Yeah, somebody who would probably have a bit of trouble getting a gig.
Anthony Griffin. Yeah, like that. That's all who's going to do.
Either that or a rookie coach. Yeah.
That's the two options that will be open to them. Like, 'cause you're not going to get Wayne Bennett or Craig Bellamy or Ivan Cleary. But you know what? If the Roosters go really badly and keep doing these weird recruitment things, maybe they'll sack Trent Robinson and he can go there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Although they have the situation seems to have improved there.
Did you see they're letting Dom Young go, the $2 million man?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
That's bizarre, man.
I think maybe people have talked about maybe some issues with his defence, his decision making in defence.
He's 23 years old.
Yeah. Well, they're ruthless. As soon as they see an issue with a player, that they just cut them loose. That they don't muck around. So that's just the way they do business there. I mean, they're entitled to do that. But then they can't then turn around and say that we're this nice family club who look after everybody. No. As soon as a player's not doing the job, you cut him. So that's...
Yeah, there's no family club.
No. There's no loyalty. They can't claim to be loyal to play. They're loyal to players who win for them.
Yeah.
They're not loyal to anything else.
Exactly.
That's just how they are.
Speaking of cutthroat, that judiciary is really gone cutthroat on Jacob Preston over what shouldn't have even been a penalty, let alone a charge, sin bin, let alone a charge, let alone a 4-game suspension.
Yeah, I mean, if Big Tino had have just got up, nothing happened. That's not a charge. That's nothing. It's the fact that Tino stayed down and milked it. Then they had 5 looks at it, and then Preston was sin bin on
down,
report.
The slowest speed you can possibly get it to make it look like Jacob Preston was applying some kind of pressure to the neck for like 35 minutes. But in reality, as he was falling, Tino's head pops out underneath his arm. He didn't
execute the crusher tackle. If he didn't execute it, then why did he get charged with it?
One of the things about control of the head or neck that to apply that pressure is you have to have control. And if the person can pop their head out like it just automatically popped out, it means you didn't apply any pressure. You get control of the head and neck through pressure. It's wrestling, you know. If I can, for the most part, depending on who the person is, grab the back of your head and pull it down, right? If I don't have good control, your head will just pop out and you'll feel nothing. And that's what it was. Like, his head popped out. There was no downward pressure to the neck. There was no crusher tackle. Jacob Preston wasn't even behind the guy. Like, a crusher tackle is the motion of a full Nelson, which is illegal in, like, everything. It's a WWE move. And it's fair enough that it's banned. You're using your body to apply a full motion pressure to the back of a full Nelson pressure to the back of the head, which is a neck crank. And can cause damage to your head and neck. As Jacob Preston is falling on top of the player he's tackling, which is Tino, yes, he was behind Tino's head and neck for a split second, not even a full second, and then Tino's head pops out underneath his arm and he falls onto his chest. And then he lays there going, rubbing his neck.
Yeah.
And then they get a penalty, they get a sin bin, on report, a charge and a 4-week ban. It's not right. And I've not seen anyone who thinks it was right.
No, well, they're saying that if it weren't for those I guess his past history, that he would have got away with just a fine if he had taken the early plea, and that they reckon that. But how can past history have so much bearing on a ban? How could it be? If it's 3 weeks with an early plea, with past history, without past history, it's only a fine with an early plea. How can there be that big a disparity? All right, if it was a 1-game disparity, you go, okay, but a 3-game disparity just on past history, then there's something wrong with the system in that case.
It shouldn't have even been a penalty. Let's just be clear about that. It shouldn't have been a penalty. But the entire system is incorrect in that he got 4 weeks because he fought it. Because it shouldn't have even been a penalty. That's why they fought it. Because they looked at that and went, well, that's not even a penalty. The refs made a mistake here. The match review committee's made a mistake here.
Yeah.
let's like go fight it and show them how they make a mistake. And then the end result, who was on the judiciary to give that? Like what? They should get a jiu-jitsu or wrestler person on their judiciary as well, because I would have looked at that and went, no pressure to the head and neck. Yeah,
and Preston's lawyer even said afterwards that the NRL need to come down on diving, and this is the problem. While they're rewarding the diving will keep happening. While players know that, if I just get straight back up here, we won't get a penalty. If I stay down, we might get a penalty. They're going to keep staying down. So while the referees are rewarding the diving will continue.
Yeah, you notice all the dives happen when they've been put down on their back. So they're going to have a slow play of the ball. Right? So I saw some discussion about people saying like, there's not enough time for this kind of thing to go through your head. But actually, if you are a high intensity athlete, you can go through a lot in your head in a very, very short period of time.
Yeah.
What is going through their head is, I've just given away a slow play of the ball. Mm. He kind of touched my neck. If I stay down here, it doesn't matter how... Once you have a slow play of the ball, it doesn't matter how slow the play of the ball is, right? Mm. The difference between a 3-second play of the ball and a 7-minute play of the ball is actually, it's nothing. Because the slow play of the ball means the defensive line is set. So they've gone down. I'm on my back. I'm going to have to turn over. I'm going to give away a slow play of the ball. He touched my neck a little bit. If I stay down and rub my neck, then I might get a penalty. Stay down, you rub your neck, you give it 3 or 4 seconds. As I said, it doesn't matter. You've already got a slow play of the ball anyway. Okay, he's not giving me a penalty. Get up, Tino, and you get up. That's all going through their head at that time, and that's what he did. He went, I'm on my back, slow play the ball. Their defensive line's going to be set.
Yeah.
Dummy half's not going to be able to pull something off, whatever. We're going to have to do a 1 out, I'll stay down and see what I can get, and just so happens to get the penalty. But then to sin bin him, put it on report, just is ridiculous. And then for the match review community to go, yeah, he was right, let's give him a 4-game ban.
And this is what annoys me as well, is that the referees the game with the mentality, with a paranoid mentality. That their mentality is, I can't miss this, otherwise I might lose my job. That's why they have a look at everything, because they're worried about their own job. Do they not think that if they didn't see it with the naked eye, then it can't be that bad? If they missed it, if they didn't see it, well, how bad could it be? If they didn't see it, well, maybe it can just be left to the match review committee to deal with it. That's what the match review committee is for. The match review committee is there to look over incidents that the referee, in the run of the game, live play, the game going on at a fast pace, would miss in the heat of the moment. That's why the match review committee is there. The match review committee is a backstop for the on-field referee. Yeah. But they keep they're paranoid that, if I miss something, I'm going to lose my job. That's why they keep stopping the game all the time. So the whole mentality of the referees is wrong, and it's driven by a fear of losing their job, and the fans pay the price because they have to sit through stoppage after stoppage, players staying down, and referees just refereeing the game with a paranoid mindset, worried about losing their job.
And then it goes to the NRL and their inconsistencies in punishment. Old mate last week got 2 weeks for a double flying knee to the head. Yeah. Doing a Mortal Kombat move to the head of someone, 2 weeks. And then, again, you see that argument for that. It was like, but Jacob Preston has loading. How much loading does he have to go to 4 weeks for such a small thing?
This is it. This is what's frustrating. So if he didn't have the loading, he could have just got fined with an early plea. But as it's turned out, and that's the thing, they've gone and fought that charge at the judiciary. They were in their rights to fight it because it was such an excessive penalty. It's not like, it was a flush hit to the head or something where you go, oh, come on, you're fighting that. Like, you're kidding yourself. They were in their rights to fight that because it was so... Well, it was no big deal. That's why they took the fight to the judiciary, because they thought, well, this is overkill here. We could get him off here. And it's ended up with a 4-game ban, when if he had no loading, it would have just been a fine if he'd taken the early plea. That's when you know that the system is the issue. They can't just fall back on, it was loading. That's why it was 3 games or 4 games. No, but that's the issue here. How can it be early plea fine or fight it at the judiciary and lose 4 games just because of the loading?
I'm curious as to how much loading he has. Why didn't that much, like, to go from a fine to 3 games, how much loading did he have that on the previous charge the loading didn't put it over the line, you know?
Yeah.
Isn't the loading cleared after you've used it?
Well, it should be. I don't like the loading system. I think you just judge each offence on its merits, and once you've done your time, you've done your time. The slate gets wiped clean. I don't like the loading system. You know, if they, like, each charge is on its own in my book. If they decide for one charge or early plea and you fine $2,000 or whatever, all right, well, that's it. The $2,000 fine, that's it. We wipe the slate clean. You shouldn't then carry the baggage of it into the next charge.
You most assuredly shouldn't be carrying loading for non-similar offences. Like, if you're going out there and coat hangering guys every round, you come back, they probably need to extend your bans. You know, like, it's obviously not working. Take your iPad away for 20 minutes, then an hour, because you keep coat hanging people. But if you accidentally don't crusher someone and they call it a crusher, and then a few weeks later, like, you accidentally just collect someone around the head or neck and they get up and play the ball, and then they go, well, now you've got loading, that's 4 weeks. No, man. I don't have loading.
So apparently it was... it was 2 previous offences this year from Preston. That's what they say has caused this to be such an inflated suspension.
The offence last time, why wasn't that a suspension from the loading from the one before that? Why? Yeah. How can you have so much loading, whatever loading?
I hate loading.
To go from a fine to 4 weeks.
No,
that is
ridiculous.
A massive amount of loading.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, it would have been 3 weeks if he had taken the early plea, but I say it again, it wasn't a ridiculous decision to contest this at the judiciary. It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't somebody clocking someone in the head and just wasting everybody's time by going to the judiciary. It was, they had legitimate reason to be going to the judiciary and fighting this because it was such a rubbish charge.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Everyone looked at that and went, after the sin bin, everyone looked at that and went, well, he's not going to get charged.
Yeah.
Because that's just nonsense. The referee's made a mistake here.
Yeah.
And then he got charged and everyone was like, well, it's not going to be a hard one. It was a hard one, like a harsh one. And then everyone was like, well, he should fight that because he'll definitely win it. You know?
Yeah, and this is another disruption for the Bulldogs. They've already got Satili Tupanua suspended. They've already got Josh Curran suspended. So Matt Burton will be back from suspension for this top-of-the-table clash against the Raiders on Saturday. It's hard to believe you're talking about the Bulldogs and the Raiders playing a top-of-the-table game. It feels like it's 1994 all over again that they're playing a top-of-the-table clash, but that's what it is.
I don't care what
their teams
says.
1 and 2.
Raiders can still get the spoon.
But, I mean, this is going to be an issue for them going into this game is now no Preston, no Curran, no Tupanua. Burton comes back. But, gee, they're going to be thin. I know they've got some depth this year, but they're going to be thin in the forwards this week.
Where is it? And it's in Canberra.
Yeah.
Oh, see, this is the thing when I'm tipping the Bulldogs, right? I'm an R between them.
And the Raiders are actually favourites with bookmakers for this game, and I think it's because of those suspensions. I think if all those players were in, the Bulldogs would be favourites, but you take 3 key forwards out of a team. Well, it's hard for anybody. It's hard for the top of the ladder team to cover it. It's hard for anybody to cover it.
The funny thing about it, the Bulldogs named Jacob Preston. They were so confident he would get off that they named him at 12. You know, like, that's how ridiculous the charge was. Nobody thought that was a good charge. Anyway.
Yeah, now he's gone for 4 weeks. They wanted to get him off so that he could be available for Origin 1, so that's not going to happen now. So, but, you know, I don't blame them for fighting it, again, because it was a ridiculous charge and there was every reason to think he could have got off. So I'm not going to blame the club for fighting it. I think it was common sense to fight it. They're unlucky this time, but now they're going to have to deal with missing 3 of their top forwards for this, again, top of the table clash against the Raiders on Saturday.
Speaking of the Raiders,
yes,
our best friend, the best referee in the game, Gerard Sutton, was the ref for the Storm versus Raiders clash, which the Raiders, they won, right?
Yes, they did. Yeah, some dicey decisions there towards the end of the game from Gerard Sutton once again.
Why doesn't he ever get sacked?
Or
suspended or dropped to lower grades or whatever they do.
Well, I think it's long overdue for him to spend some time in reserve grade. He just shows week after week that he's just not up to the job. He's out of his depth. And the pressure of the situation got to him late in that game. It was a big game. 2 of the best teams in the competition. And he couldn't handle the pressure. A couple of very questionable decisions. Credit to Craig Bellamy. Didn't blame the official. Didn't blame Gerard Sutton after the game.
Crazy, though.
I mean, he went crazy at his players. Yeah. But it would have been easy for him to blow up about the officiating. He didn't do it.
For sure.
I wonder what would have happened if the result, or if the shoe was on the other foot and the Raiders had been dudded by those calls. I wonder how Ricky Stewart would have handled that. But anyway, so the first incident that he completely messed up, Gerard Sutton, was the Storm was stripped of a field goal at the 75th minute when Trent Loiero elbowed Joe Tarpany in the tackle before the field goal attempt. He went back a previous tackle and stripped the field goal because of an elbow in the previous tackle. This is how paranoid he was. He went back a tackle. You can't do that. He's just making up rules on the fly.
Yeah.
And then there was another incident where Storm prop Stefano Utokamanu
that was the one that I caught.
Conceded a contentious penalty while his side were 10 metres from Canberra's line. In the ensuing set, Melbourne lock Loiero hit Hudson Young high, gifting the Raiders the match-winning 2 points.
That Utokamanu one, I don't even know how you can come up with a penalty there. I don't. What was the rule that was broken?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just... But Starling wouldn't get out from underneath him. So Starling milked it. Starling milked it.
Isn't it ruck infringement?
Well, I think it was given as that ruling, but what was he supposed to do? Starling wouldn't get up. Starling milked it. So it was ruled that way, but it shouldn't have been ruled that way. So it was a mistake from the referee again.
Sometimes you see penalties given away like that where the opposing player, the defending player is holding the jersey when the ref can't see and things like that. They're also getting really good at doing stuff like that. But I couldn't even see, if anything, it was ruck infringement, yeah?
Yeah, well, that was the ruling, yeah.
But it wasn't a penalty. Like, it was a penalty that was given away. It should have been a 6 again, the 6 again ruck infringement.
Yeah.
But it was a penalty, yeah?
Yeah.
The penalty was given away.
Yeah.
So it should have been, I thought, if anything, like, first of all, I don't know what he did wrong, to be honest. Like, I can't see what he did wrong. Starling is just, like, basically entering into a leg entanglement. These guys need to stop doing wrestling, for sure. All of them.
Yeah.
To hold Utokamanu down. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but it's close enough.
Yeah, it's close enough.
Holding him down, right? That's basically what it was. He's doing everything he can to get out of there. Starling's not letting him. If anything, it's ruck infringement, 6 again. If anything. But no, it was a penalty. And it just went downhill from there.
Yeah, and just going back, and on that field goal, like going back the previous tackle, that's an example of what I was talking about before, this paranoia. Oh, if I miss this, I'm going to lose my job, and he panics and feels like he has to give a penalty there and go back a tackle.
Not on nonsense. And then I think the penalty for the 2 points, the conversion was fair. Like, that's the thing, though. But he gave them the position.
Yeah, it was what led up to that.
Yeah, he gave them the position to take it. Like, that's the thing with it, right? Yeah. He gave away a penalty that shouldn't have existed. He put them in position, and then he gave them a penalty. And it seemed like he was targeting the Storm. there was just like 3 ridiculous rulings against us. Well, one of them was correct, definitely correct, but 2 ridiculous rulings that led to the third one.
Yeah, and I think Craig Bellamy, I know we saw that vision of him blowing up at those players, but he showed a lot of maturity by not pinning the blame on the match officials, and I think it shows why the Storm are where they are and have been where they are for so long, is that Craig Bellamy's smart enough to know that the officiating, it goes both ways over time. They might have been they were hard done by in this game by the officiating, but he knows that over time that'll even itself out, and over the long run it's not the officiating that decides how your team's going to go. He knows it's far more important for his players not to lose their heads in that situation, and he's well aware that that's far more important than what the officials are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why the Storm are where they are. And again, I would say that if the situation were reversed, and if the Storm had won on the back of some favourable refereeing decisions that went against the Raiders, would Ricky Stewart have reacted in the same way as Craig Bellamy? I think we all know the answer to that.
We'd still be hearing about it in round 26.
Yeah.
It's like, there'd be a press conference. We can go back to that game in round 9.
And so next time Ricky blows up about the refs, someone should say to him, what about that game against the Storm where the calls went your way towards the end of the game? Yeah. I'm hoping that a reporter will put that one in the memory bank and mention it next time Ricky has a blow up about the refs, which will come the next time they lose a game, he'll blow up about the refs.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then go, what about last week, bro?
That's it.
We discussed Des Hasler at the opening, and I kind of get the feeling Wayne Bennett is in the same spot right now. He hasn't performed in a long time, and now the Rabbitohs just were diabolical.
Yeah, I guess maybe the one difference with Bennett is that he's in his first year at the Rabbitohs. But, I mean, I know what you mean in terms of he didn't perform at the Dolphins either.
Or the Broncos before them when he went
he hasn't won a comp in 15 years now. Yeah. So, he got close in 2015 where the Broncos went very close against the Cowboys. And he got close in 2021 with the Rabbitohs nearly beating the Panthers in that grand final.
To me, that's kind of like Des Hasler's two at Manly, 2 finals appearances at Manly.
Do you mean that the 2 at the Bulldogs, the 2 grand finals at the Bulldogs? The 2 finals appearances in his second stint at Manly.
Inconsistencies. I think Wayne Bennett obviously has more achievements than Des Hasler. So But he had that. I'll tell you what he did, and I know he's a great coach and everything. But that team that he had at the Broncos, which coach? What I would say is, he won those premierships at the Broncos. It was 92, 93, 97 Super League, 98, 2000, and 2006. What I would say is, how many coaches wouldn't have won those premierships at the Broncos? 2000. How many? I think. The premiership with your Dragons in 2010, that's his best achievement as a coach. What I was going to say. 2010, you can't deny. Nobody... That was the one where you could say, well, in all the previous ones you had that team, but in 2010 you had that Dragons team. And the Dragons, they were leading the ladder all the time, and because of that, they were picked for Origin. And all of the Dragons players at Origin level, and even when they went to other clubs, were found really lacking. It was solely the culture, the combination and everything at the Dragons. And that's the thing. That's one thing that he can always point to. He can always say, because the Dragons hadn't won a premiership in so long before 2010, so he can say, well, hang on, I went to a new club that hadn't won a comp for so long and I won a comp there. If that had not have happened and he was just relying on the 6 premierships at the Broncos, a lot of people would be going, well, who wouldn't have won those premierships with the teams that you had? Then now you've got this situation where his last 4 clubs, it's hard to count because he's changed so much. Yeah, he has. 4 clubs, he's not performed very well. And the Rabbitohs just aren't getting better. I mean, like you say, he's in his first year there. He has had some injury issues. Latrell Mitchell in and out of different positions, but they were awful against the Knights. Yeah, and you talk about Latrell Mitchell.
This was that game against the Knights. They were terrible, and the Knights' attack was terrible going into that game. The Knights had only scored 72 points in 7 games for the season before that game, at just over 10 points a game. Then they come up against the Rabbitohs and they put 30 on them. And that's the thing, Latrell Mitchell suspended for that game. They really could have done with him. They didn't have Cody Walker, Jack Whiten, Alex Johnston, Jamie Humphries and Cameron Murray all through injury.
And Cameron Murray's out for the year.
Yeah, and Cameron Murray, they won't have him back. He's gone for the year with that Achilles injury. But all those players are missing, and of course, Latrell's suspended again. So,
Well, Latrell will be back this week.
yeah.
And we'll see how long he lasts. But yeah, like the Rabbitohs, they were diabolical like against the Knights, and they don't look like they're improving. They don't look like they're getting better. It is 1/3 of the way for the year, but when it's a Wayne Bennett coach club, you expect immediate results. You know, like round one, you expect immediate results.
Yeah, and you want to see... and that's the thing, that they weren't in a situation where, you look at their roster at full strength, and I know they've had some injuries this year, but you look at their roster at full strength and you go, that's not a bad team on paper, and you'd think a coach at Wayne Bennett's calibre could have them going better than what they are now. This is the thing with Latrell Mitchell. He only played 11 games last year, only 16 the year before. They didn't make the 8 both years. He's on a $1.1 million salary. They haven't been getting value for money out of him for a long time now, and we keep getting these disruptions, injuries, suspensions all the time. It's time for him to really aim up here and get his team surging up the ladder here.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of players you look at like that, right?
Yeah, 100%. But they're in 13th spot now, the Rabbitohs.
They don't look good.
This has been another lacklustre start.
That's what I mean. You expect instant turnaround with Wayne Bennett, like when he went to the Dragons, when he went to the Rabbitohs. Not the Knights. Well, the Knights actually turned around well when he first went there, and then the off-field Nathan Tinkler stuff turned him to crap. He turned the Knights around, the Rabbitohs around the first time really quickly. He turned the Broncos around the second time really quickly. But now, the Dolphins, there was then a turnaround situation. It was a fresh team. He's gone to the Rabbitohs, and they're just as bad this year as they were last year.
Yeah, and last year everyone said, before Demetrio got sacked, everyone said, Demetrio doesn't have control over the players, he lacks authority over the players, that the culture's bad under Demetrio. Everyone was saying that, and up until Demetrio got sacked. This year they're performing the same way, and nobody's questioning the culture, just because it's Wayne Bennett coaching. But there's been no improvement this year.
I'd like to see what happens next year, but I don't see the Rabbitohs improving this year. But Latrell's back this week.
That game against the Bulldogs, with their attack, where they lost 32-0.
Oh, man.
Do you honestly think, after having, and I know that was a couple of weeks ago, but I mean they were terrible against the Knights on the weekend as well. So you watch those 2 games and you go, are they better this year than they were last year? No. Are they worse? Yes, they are. They're even worse under Bennett than they were under Demetrio.
They don't look like scoring points at all. And they got the Broncos this week, who are going to be smarting from their loss, which we'll get to soon. But, you don't expect them to win this week as well. And like I said before, we talk about the Titans and the Eels. They're only 2 points behind the Rabbitohs.
Yeah.
There is actual danger that, are they two? Yeah, Rabbitohs are on 8 points. Titans and Eels and Panthers and Dolphins are on 6. Rabbitohs are in danger of a slide here.
Yeah, I guess the flip side, the Rabbitohs will try and go, we're 4 wins and 5 losses. And if you look at the ladder, the Broncos are 5th with 5 wins and 4 losses. So they'll be saying to themselves, the Broncos have only won 1 more game than us. The Broncos are only 2 points in front of them, and the Broncos are 5th. So that's the other side of it. The Rabbitohs will say, we've had all these players out. Once we get players back, it's not going to take much for us to go up the ladder. But I'll tell you what, the way they played, as I said, those 2 games in particular, the one against the Knights, again, the Knights couldn't score points before that game. that they made the Knights look like the best attacking team in the comp.
And that's like, if you just look at it on paper, the Rabbitohs are only 2 points behind 5th, but also they're only 2 points in front of 17th.
Yeah,
So
Fletcher Sharpe.
Everything's really close, but then when you look at it not on paper, you can see the Rabbitohs aren't going to 5th anytime soon, but they could very well go to 17th sometime soon, depending on how the Titans and the Eels play. So,
yeah, and Fletcher Sharpe scored 3 tries against them. They made Fletcher Sharpe look like Andrew Johns, you know. I mean,
well, he's better than what's the Willie Mason one that he hates?
Tyson Gamble.
Yeah, Fletcher Sharpe's better. Matty Johns is worried about Fletcher Sharpe.
Yes.
I think everybody should be worried about every single person at every.
Yeah,
single,
that's a bit of a segue for us.
Yeah, every single player at the Broncos, right? I mean, at the Knights right now, because Dylan Brown's contract of like $48 million or whatever he's worth now. Best half in the league. Will cause salary cap issues over at the Knights, and players like Fletcher Sharpe, who, you know, it is one game, Matty Johns. Like, Fletcher Sharpe's been playing very well for the Knights, and then on the weekend he showed like what he can do by scoring 3 tries. Air quotes, what he can do. But it is a danger. There's a bunch of players at the Knights that will be adversely affected by the Dylan Brown contract.
Yeah, this is the thing. So there's sort of 2 reasons why the Dylan Brown deal has Matty Johns worried. The first reason, of course, is, well, they're paying him so much money, that $1.3 million a year over 10 years, so that $13 million deal. So that's one point of concern is, well, he's being paid so much, so that's going to have other ramifications on their salary cap, and they may have to let the likes of Fletcher Sharpe go. The other reason why that deal is a worry is because now all it takes is someone like Fletcher Sharpe to play one good game like that. And then all of a sudden, other clubs will be going, oh, gee, we might want to offer him $750,000. And the Knights, they may not be in a position to offer him that because of all the money tied up in Dylan Brown. So because Dylan Brown has, you know, he's distorted the market, basically.
Yeah, he has.
Now, any half who plays one good game here or there can all of a sudden go, oh, well, you got Dylan Brown coming here next year, so I want out. I want to go get $750,000 somewhere else off the back of one good game where you scored 3 tries. Even though, as I said, the Knights were terrible in attack before that game, they were only scoring just over 10 points a game prior to that game, and the Rabbitohs made them look like world beaters.
Well, that's it. Like, Fletcher Sharpe hasn't been playing badly, but he's not a 3-try-a-game guy. But it is a danger like that. They're going to be able to use that, and if you continue, when you have a team that's not pretty bad, like when you have a team that's low on form, it can make some individual players look like superstars. Mm-hmm. You know, because it's like the Dally M votes, right? Somebody's got to get, what are the points now? 6 points. So if tomorrow you had the Eels versus the Titans, for example, somebody's got to get 6 points. So somebody will, on paper, look really good.
Yeah.
And when you compare Fletcher Sharpe to a lot of the other Knights players, he does look like one of their, like he's playing the best out of all the players. And so he is going to get good money offers, especially given that the market right now, with just the lack of players running around, and the fact that he can fill in. Like he can be one of those players. He's not going to be $1 million player, right? Like, you know, but
no, but
Dragons are soon to be in desperate need of a half, I'd guess. The Titans, obviously, there's a whole bunch of clubs that need a half, and Fletcher Sharpe's going to become a $600,000-$700,000.
That's the thing. One good game, and all of a sudden you could be asking for $750,000. And that's the thing. It's only one good game so far. What if he has a run of 3 or 4 good games in a row? He might, and then all of a sudden, what does he become a $1 million?
Yeah. He does in this play right now because of Dylan Brown.
Yeah.
He, it'll be the Roosters will give him, well, they're getting Daddy Cherry Evans. The Dragons will give him $1.4 million over 10 years. You know, because that's what it is now. Dylan Brown hasn't had a good game this year, and he's worth $1.3 million over 10 years. $1.3 million a year over 10 years.
Yeah, $13 million, Powerball winner.
Yeah, Matty Johns is right to be worried. That contract, honestly, just who thought it was a good idea?
It was unbelievable. Before Mitchell Moses came back, Parramatta were struggling completely when Dylan Brown was running the show. And all of a sudden Mitchell Moses comes back and they start playing much better. I know they lost on the weekend to the Sharks, but prior to that they were much better with Moses there. But yeah, none of the rare moments where they've played well this year have only been because of Mitchell Moses. Dylan Brown's had nothing to do with it. So yeah, I don't know what they're... and that's the thing. You might, like, a few people were saying, oh, yeah, but Dylan Brown's, he's running a lot better since Moses has been there. It's like, yeah, because Moses is there. Moses is not going to be there next year with him at Newcastle. He's going to be running the show.
Yeah.
So who's going to... And that's the thing. They'll have Kalen Ponga, but he's at fullback. He's not up in the line. So who's going to make his life... Which playmaker is going to make his life easier next year? Mitchell Moses isn't going to be with him.
If the Eels beat the Dolphins this week and they leave the bottom of the ladder for, the first time this year, it's not off the back of Dylan Brown. They've been on the bottom of the ladder all year, and then 2 weeks ago Mitchell Moses comes back, and then 2 weeks later the Eels are no longer on the bottom of the ladder. Because the Eels and Dolphins, whoever, they're both on 6 points. So if the Eels win, they Dolphins drop and the Eels jump up to that 8-point block. It's not off the back of Dylan Brown. It's just it's the causation correlation theory. Just because Mitchell Moses came back, then it might not be it. It's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's just not. So yeah, it's this. Matty Johns is right to be worried. That whole Newcastle they're in a bit of salary cap weirdness right now, and we're going to see what happens next year.
And the other, this is the problem is that. Under the salary cap, just that Dylan Brown deal, that's just going to be... That is really going to make life difficult for the Eels. And Matty Johns probably realises that someone like a Fletcher Sharpe is perfect for the salary cap era in terms of, the Knights are getting good form out of him, but he's not on much money. That's how you get around the salary cap. Is you have players playing well who are playing really well who are not on much money. You don't thrive in the salary cap era by paying Dylan Brown $1.3 million a year. You thrive in the salary cap era by getting someone lesser known like Fletcher Sharpe playing above their weight and scoring 3 tries when they're not on much money. And so if the Knights are going to lose a player like that, well, that's really not what they want.
Well, yeah, they need Dylan Brown to really, really step up and do something. Another half that got, the rumoured offers this week was Toby Sexton. It was $1 million at the Bulldogs, but I don't believe that for a second.
No, I don't think they'd pay that for him. No, because they'd go, if he wanted that, they would let him go.
Yeah,
because,
exactly. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, if it came to that, if it came to him wanting $1 million, they'd let him go and just blood one of their young players.
Well, they could instead let him go and buy Fletcher Sharpe for $650,000.
Yeah, they wouldn't pay $1 million for him. So yeah, there's no way he'd be getting it.
I know. It was one of those stupid internet rumours. The Bulldogs are ready to throw $1 million at Toby Sexton. No, they're not, man. Speaking of the Bulldogs, the Broncos beat them last week, smashed them, destroyed them, and then the Panthers grand final the Broncos this week. So Michael Maguire's. I saw a story today about he hasn't been able to get rid of the plastic action hero mentality that the Broncos have. So they get really big on themselves. The players get really big on themselves after they beat the Broncos, and then
the Bulldogs.
After they beat the Bulldogs, and then they go off to have to play the Panthers, and look what happens, because they got pumped by the Panthers, last place team. Yeah.
Well, going into that game, the Panthers were the last place team. They're not now, but only because they won that game. Going into that game, they were last. So this is the inconsistency of the Broncos. They beat the team they smashed the team on top of the ladder, as you said. Then the next week they lose to the team that's coming last on the ladder, and I know it was the Panthers. But, they were last going into that game. So, and, everybody would have expected the Broncos to win that game given the way the Panthers were playing. And we had that eerie situation where Nathan Cleary scored a try where it looked exactly like the try that he scored in the 2023 grand final.
That is proof we are in a simulation.
Yeah, well, it could be. It was very eerie, wasn't it? It was. It looked like the exact same try.
The defending players all react in exactly the same way. Well.
It's unbelievable.
It's so bizarre.
It's unbelievable.
The internet has them both together, and it's like it hurts to watch. You're like,
and that just shows you how off the Broncos were. Like, if you're not going to remember a play that was executed at that stage in a grand final, well, when are you going to remember when a play was executed?
It actually it kind of just speaks to what I was talking about before, how quickly they can think things through, right? In that split second, Nathan Cleary was able to go, this is exactly the same, and do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
The amount of thought that had to go through the head. So, people who say that Tino didn't go through that, all that in his head, look at what Nathan Cleary did. He looked up and went, oh, I remember this. Let me just do the exact same thing. But seriously, it's proof we're living in a simulation. I'm moving over to simulation belief right now, seriously. I was looking at the video just going, nah. Because when you play a video game, you learn the patterns of the bad guys, and you do the overcome the pattern. And it can, if you play a video game multiple times, it can come down to you watch two recordings and they're exactly the same because you've learnt the pattern so well. All video games are just pattern recognition, even though they try to add some randomness into it. And that's what it was. He went through this pattern recognition. I'm like, nah, simulation.
Yeah, well, that's right, and I still sort of think they're being overrated by bookmakers, the Broncos. They're still their third favourites behind the Storm and the Bulldogs. They're in fifth spot with 5 wins and 4 losses. That's very inconsistent. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. I still think they are better than they were last year. Of course they are. They missed the 8 last year. They're 5th at the moment. But Michael Maguire was brought there to... This is the thing, that they were hot and cold last year. Michael Maguire was brought there. They've got the roster. He was brought there to instill the discipline in them. He was brought. The whole reason he was brought there was to overcome this problem. They have the roster. They've got the superstar roster, but he's just not being able to execute that so far.
The thing he hasn't been able to do is they can't overcome adversity. Once they're behind, and that's it. Even if they're 1 try behind, even if they're a few hit-ups behind, they just get that, the momentum shift. They can't get any momentum back. And I still think a lot of it will come down to when Ezra Mam comes back. I still think one of the big issues is the Ben Hunt, Adam Reynolds show is the issue. Because once... now that Reece Walsh isn't in, you saw last week, they didn't have any issues with Selwyn Cobbo trying to do everything himself. But if Reece Walsh had been there, you would have had 3 players all trying to take control. Once Ben Hunt goes to hooker, which is undoubtedly what's going to happen, he won't be able to take control and disrupt Adam Reynolds. He'll do stuff out of dummy half, but he won't be able, because the dummy half follows what the halfback says. When the halfback yells, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. If the halfback isn't yelling, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, or we're going left, then the hooker takes over and goes, oh, I should kick it, or I should go right or left. But then it'll help Michael Maguire overcome that fact that the Broncos just can't come back when they're down. They cop a 1-2 punch and then they're down for the count straight away.
Yeah, well, that just sums them up, that they beat the team on top of the ladder one week, smashed the team on top of the ladder one week.
On top from the beginning.
And then the next week they get smashed by the team that at that time was on the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah,
it's as clear as day. That's all you have to look at if you're Michael Maguire and the Broncos. That's as glaring an inconsistency as you could have for a team. So, at least they've got the time to correct it. We're still only very early in the season, but But yeah, I've thought all year pretty much that third favourites. I don't know whether maybe that's got to do with teams like the Panthers and Roosters overall probably not being where they were this year. Maybe that's got something to do with it. And, even though like teams like the Raiders are performing above expectations, maybe bookies are not yet willing to sort of count the Raiders as a real contender. So it's probably a combination of those things, a combination of teams who are traditionally up there have dropped off this year, and other teams sort of yet to really fill the void is maybe why a team like the Broncos are still third favourites with bookmakers at the moment.
But yeah, I just think until they can correct that, like once they get down, not on the scoreboard, I'm not talking about on the scoreboard, once they're getting a little bit manhandled, once they get a little bit of push, they just collapse. They just totally collapse and give everything. You see the losses they've had, right? Like, because they don't lose pretty either.
No. And that game against the Bulldogs, you sort of had this feeling maybe, like with a lot of what was happening in the game, you just felt like it was one of those games where it was just the Broncos' night. Like everything went their way, everything sort of fell into place for them. I think the Bulldogs dropped the ball like on one of the first plays of the game. The Bulldogs got a bunch of players sin-binned. They got penalised a lot. It just had this feeling of it's just the Broncos' night. And like you say, once the chips are down and things start going against them, they got no resilience.
Yeah. Still with the Broncos and Ezra Mam. He won't be slotting straight back into 5/8. It's been decided he'll go do a few weeks in Queensland Cup after his 9-game ban ends. 9 games for driving while under the influence of cocaine, 4 games for a fake crusher tackle,
and crashing into an Uber and injuring a 4-year-old girl. Injuring a mother and injuring an Uber driver.
Just over twice as bad as a non-crusher tackle. He'll be playing in the Queensland Cup instead of sliding straight back into the Broncos. It's good that Michael Maguire hasn't gone panic stations after last round, But they do have the Rabbitohs this week, and we've just spent the last 15 minutes talking about how bad the Rabbitohs are. So there's no point in bringing Ezra Mam straight back in because they've got the Rabbitohs. So they can easily dominate the Rabbitohs, you would think. So they can ease Ezra Mam back into it.
Yeah, and I saw something the other day where a few people were suggesting that, are they holding him off for a week because he got booed at Magic Round?
No.
Well, no, I mean, those boos are going to be there regardless of when he comes back. Do they really think that, if we put it off a week, people will have forgotten about it by next week? No, if he gets booed, he's going to get booed, and he's going to have to live with that. People don't like what happened. People don't like what he did, and people don't like that he got such a soft punishment for it. So I'm sorry, people are going to boo him over that, regardless of when he comes back. Exactly. So that shouldn't be a part of their thinking, because he's going to get booed. We all know that. So they need to think about what's best for their team, and they've decided that they're going to hold it off for the moment, and he's going to come back in Queensland Cup.
They've got Rabbitohs, then Dragons, then the bye. He's probably not going to get picked for Origin because Cameron Munster will in 5/8.
No, and he's too underdone. He hasn't played this year.
So they can basically ease him back in because they got a couple of pretty easy games for the next couple of weeks at a bye, and he can play in the lower grades, get back to playing. It's actually it's a good decision.
Yeah, so you'd have to think. I think you said they got 2 games then the bye.
Yeah.
So you'd have to think that he'll just play Queensland Cup for
3 weeks.
3 weeks, including that week where they got the bye, and then he'll probably come back the week after.
Play against the Sea Eagles.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it has anything. I don't think Michael Maguire cares if he got booed or not. I just don't think he cares.
No, well, it's just not. Professional athletes can't be worried about that sort of stuff. So I don't know why that suggestion was made. It was a bizarre one. He's just going to have to cop that on the chin. People are going to boo him given the circumstances.
One of the things was every time it mentioned Ezra Mam being booed in the news, they would say and they don't know if it was the Panthers fans or the Broncos fans booing them. Why did you need to mention that?
Yeah, and I hope people don't start saying that it's racist, the booing. I hope that doesn't No, it's not it's not racism.
Elections, so they're not going to have a voice anymore.
It's not racism. People just don't like what he did and don't like the soft punishment. It's not racism. I hope that people don't start saying that if this continues.
Definitely will.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, the Greens lost in the elections, so they don't have as much of a voice anymore, so they can't complain about it as much. And hopefully I
think Adam Pant might have lost his seat or something.
Every 30 seconds, if you refresh the news, it'll tell you the opposite and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it'd be funny if you did.
To be honest, I don't care either way. It's boring Australian politics.
But at least we know the crackdown is over.
Yes.
Not that there was ever a crackdown, but we know the crackdown is over.
Yeah.
So we've gone back to a standard week of sin bins.
Yeah.
After 18 last week, we're back down to the 6.
Yeah.
What was it? We had 17 over the first. No.
Yeah, it was 17 over the previous 2 rounds before that one. It was 18 in total over the first 5 rounds, and then it was 18 in the last round.
6.
And now 6. So this, I think I said last week by round 12 this won't be happening. Well, it was by round 9. It happened a lot quicker. So you knew that. So now we can look back and go, what was the point of that? We knew they weren't going to stick to it, and they haven't stuck to it, and it's only taken them a week for them not to stick to it.
And they had the same amount of high tackles. I saw a breakdown for that. Around approximately the same amount of high tackles, penalties awarded, and less sin bins.
Yeah, so all we can put it down to is the referees just took it way too far one week, and now that they've
achieved nothing.
They've got their common sense back to a degree. In a lot of ways, no, but
Jacob Preston.
Well, that's the thing. That's one sin bin that was given that wasn't justified. So it should have only been 5 sin bins, and we still had in that. Titans Bulldogs game, we still had 3 sin bins in the one game there, so there's still this over sin binning going on.
So there's no chance there's any justification for 3 sin bins in a game. If you have to sin bin 3 people in a game, the referee doesn't have control, or there's something seriously wrong there. 3 sin bins in a game is massive.
So why doesn't someone go back to Andrew Abdo now and say, so why were there 18 sin bins the week before, Andrew? What and there were only 6 this week? What are you saying, that they were 2/3 worse the week before than what they were last week?
I know. I'm 100% certain the answer would be, well, the referees are only policing the game that they see in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, no.
This is where they make a rod for their own back a lot of the time, the referees. And, everybody always says, the referees have such a tough job. They do, but, they make it hard for themselves. I mean, they've got a tough job, but that doesn't mean they should come out one round and sin bin 18 players for the round.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
So, they are unfairly targeted in a lot of ways, but a lot of the time they bring a lot of it on themselves as well.
Yeah, 100%. And finally in rugby league, with my Dragons, Shane Flanagan was asked about Kyle Flanagan, and said he treats his son Kyle exactly the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Shane Flanagan. I think that's a bit of a porcupine, or you can't see your own bias.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dragons got beat on the weekend by the Tigers. As I said the other day, the half that they brought in, last week we were talking about, the half they brought in isn't really an improvement over Lachlan Ilias because they don't have any halves.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have to drop one of the 2 halves out of the 2, then Lachlan Ilias was the one because Flanagan was in better form. Air quotes, better form. But let's really face it. If Kyle Flanagan wasn't Shane Flanagan's son, Shane Flanagan would be looking for a 5/8. That's
the thing. And this is the other question you start asking, is you start going, would Kyle Flanagan be playing for any other NRL team at the moment? No, he wouldn't.
Yeah, they would be looking for a 5/8.
So that's where people are gonna claim nepotism here, because the way to get around the way to justify the selection is to go, this player could walk into any number of other NRL teams, but that's not the case.
Yeah, he never justifies it like that. He never says that because he
knows that
consciously, at the very least subconsciously, and you got to he says he treats him the same, but the Dragons don't have any halves. Their best halves are Kyle Flanagan and Lachlan Ilias. Any other club, if they were in that situation, they would be on the market for a half.
Yeah, and he says... Yeah, sorry.
No,
he's talking about his son Kyle. He says he's been one of our best players this year. And it's like, he's not having an influence on the result then, because they're coming 10th with 3 wins and 5 losses. They've lost 2 games in a row. They dropped Ilias for the Tigers game. That was a winnable game. I'm not saying that they were favourites, but they could have won that game. Those teams are fairly evenly matched. There's not that much difference. So that was a game that they could feasibly have won.
They weren't favourites, by the way.
They weren't. Look, I know they weren't favourites, but conceivably they could have won. Yeah. It wasn't as though they were playing like the Bulldogs or the Storm. That they conceivably could have won that game.
If you go back and look at a few other games this year, if they had have had a half that could close out the game and then not lose, the Rabbitohs comes to mind. Parramatta as well. And Parramatta being 2 weeks ago. Those 2 games. Dragons were ahead against the Rabbitohs and they ended up losing, I think, 20-18, right? If they had had quality halves, a higher quality halves that could have closed out the games, they would have been favourites against the Tigers. Even if they had have lost 2 other games. But the simple fact is, the Dragons don't have quality halves. And like I said, they lost to that Amon guy because of the hammer attack and all that stuff. And then they were like, their thought pattern that Shane Flanagan went through was, that's all right, I've got Kyle Flanagan here.
Yeah.
But every other club would have gone, crap, we've lost Amon, who was one of our long-term halves. We better go out and buy a half. And his half that he bought was Lachlan Ilias, who, you could say he was the best half on the market at the time, but I think Sam Walker was, actually.
You can't blame... Ilias wasn't in the team for the Tigers game, so you can't blame him for that game.
This is like that, when they dropped Ilias at the Rabbitohs last year. It's exactly the same thing, right? I just realised, last year, Rabbitohs were getting pumped, so they dropped Ilias, and they got pumped. And so you can't blame Ilias anymore.
No. But that's where I don't get where he says, he's been one of our best players this year. And then you go, but then he's not having an influence on the result. Because you won 3 games out of 8. You've lost 2 in a row. The Tigers game was a winnable game. They didn't win the game. So then you go, well, all right, if he's one of their best players, then he's a player who doesn't have an influence on the result. And if he doesn't have an influence on the result, well, maybe they need to look for some other players. But that won't be happening because his dad's the coach.
Yeah, only Jacob Little is having an actual clear influence at the moment. So, anyway, the Dragons have got who this week? They're going to get pumped for the next 2 weeks. I think they got the Warriors this week, right?
The Dragons.
Warriors in Win.
Warriors Saturday 5:30 Win Stadium. Yeah.
Yeah, and see the Warriors are quietly another one like the Raiders are just quietly pottering along, sitting at 3rd. Unmentionable. It's so bizarre. So, and then I think the Dragons have the Broncos the week after as well, or something like that, right? They've got 2 or 3 really hard games coming up. And when are we going to see him do anything about Kyle Flanagan? So it's, Broncos the following week in Brisbane. And then a bye, thank God, because of the Origin. And then they got to play the Knights, who could be... Kalen Ponga's going to go away to Origin and come back and win 10 games in a row. They don't have any easy games coming up.
Yeah.
In theory, you'd say then they got the Dolphins in a few weeks, but who knows what Dolphins are going to turn up. They got Parramatta soon, but they already lost to Parramatta.
Yeah, and he's named to play against the Warriors again, Kyle Flanagan. So that's what you say to Shane Flanagan again, if he comes out with that line again, if reporters quiz him on that and say, why is Kyle Flanagan still in the team, given that they're not winning, and he's a playmaker, and you've dropped the other half and they're still not winning. And if he comes out again and says, he's been one of our best players, then you say, well, all right, he doesn't have an influence on the result then. And then you say, well, why don't you recruit other players then? Because if he's one of your best players, he's not getting an influence on the result. Is Shane Flanagan's way of keeping his son in the team, not recruiting any other halves, so his son looks great because they got no other playmakers? So is that his secret to keeping his son in the team?
If they lose this week, is the solution if he really treats Kyle Flanagan the same as other people, wouldn't the solution then be like, all right, it wasn't Lachlan Ilias that was causing us in the halves. I should bring Lachlan Ilias back and drop Kyle Flanagan.
Yeah. And then you go, yeah, so he's a half who doesn't influence the result. Why don't you recruit a half who has an influence on the result again? Oh, that's right, your son is your son.
And Sam Walker, bro. He's going to get sacked anyway.
This is the issue, that because they're father and son, does that mean he's just not going to recruit any other halves? Because he wants to keep being able to say, oh, he's our best half. He's our best half available. Yeah, he's your best half available because you won't recruit anyone else because he's your son.
Because your other halves are locked in.
Because, So that's his secret. Recruit no other halves so that he has to keep picking his son because he's literally got no other halves on his roster.
Yeah, exactly. That's it for NRL. We'll see how many get the sin bin counter up. We'll see how many we get. I'm going to ask producer John to do a weekly social media post of the number of sin bins, actually.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Sin bin, rugby league sin bin counter.
So 18 last week, 6 this week. There's your first two posts.
Historical, where we'll do like the second slide is how many each week, and we'll do a graph for it. So I'm going to make that up today.
Do you reckon by round 12, 0 or 1 or 2?
Oh, that'll be so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I am just literally going to message him.
Yeah. So some interesting games this week. As we finish our rugby league chat here. As I say, Raiders, Bulldogs, Saturday, 3 p.m. in Canberra. Top of the table clash, if you can believe that. As I said, it feels like it's 1994 all over again with those two teams, when those two teams played in the grand final that year.
Yeah. The only game that is an easy pick, I think, this week is the Storm Tigers. Every other game, I just can't pick them. Despite looking at the odds, everything, I just can't pick them. So Eels, Dolphins, who are you going to pick? Mitchell Moses is back. Don't know, but maybe. They lost.
They lost to Cronulla.
Yeah. Knights, Titans. Knights can put 30 on the Rabbitohs, but also can only score 10 points a game. Titans, surely they're going to lose, but you don't know.
That's the thing, you don't know. The Titans are a chance because, again, we don't know what that could have just been a one-off from Newcastle. Overall, their attack's been terrible. So if the Titans are going to win a game, that's a game that they could win, even though they're the underdogs.
And then Rabbitohs and Broncos. Well, Broncos can beat first place and lose to the 17th place. So what does it mean when they play 13th?
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's the Broncos and Raiders, which would have been
Bulldogs.
Bulldogs. Sorry, I keep getting Broncos and Bulldogs, which would have been a much better game if it hadn't have been for the judiciary.
So 3, again, the Bulldogs are underdogs for that game, and I think the fact that there is no Preston, no Curran, no Tupanua, that's why they're the underdogs. Yeah. I think if they had all those 3 players, they'd be favourites, but as it stands, they're the underdogs.
Better game as well. Then the Dragons and the Warriors, you just don't know what Warriors are going to turn up, even though they're sitting 3rd. You never know what Warriors are going to turn up. Because it is an away game, it's in Wollongong. Cowboys and Panthers, well, the Panthers just had a really good win. But they've done that a couple of times this year.
Yeah.
And didn't the Cowboys already beat the Panthers?
That's the other thing about the Panthers. One thing you would say is a lot of people might be tempted to go, oh, they're back. Their wins have only been in isolation this year, and then they've fallen back into a rut.
They got Storm and Tigers, which is an easy pick. Sorry, Adam.
I'm going to check it, but I don't think the Panthers have won 2 games in a row this year.
And then the last game of the round is the Seagulls versus the Sharks, which is 7 versus 6. This is not going to be a fun pick this round. No. One of the guys in my tipping comp this week picked 1. 1 from 8. That's tipping this year, man. Yeah, look, Cowboys already beat the Panthers, so they're going to play them again. Oh, man, I don't know who to pick.
Yeah, I don't know about these, playing teams twice in the first 8 or 9 weeks.
I was trying to explain
have already
to
played the Titans twice.
One of my friends is a big IPL fan, right? And in the IPL, each team plays each other 3 times, and he was like, "Don't you think that's too much? How much do they play each other in rugby league?" And I was like, either 1 or 2 times. Sometimes they'll play the same team twice within a few weeks. He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know how much more simply I can state it, but I understand your confusion. Don't they play each other once? Nope. Don't they play each other twice? Nope. They play some of the teams twice. And so they play all the teams and then they play the other teams that they have to repeat. Nope. Sometimes I'll play the same guys in 3 weeks. What do you mean? Again, don't know how much more simply I can state it. That's just the way it is. It's nonsensical.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Panthers haven't won back-to-back games this year.
So
because they won in round 1, and then they went on that big losing streak, and then they beat the Roosters, lost to Manly, and beat the Broncos. So they haven't put back-to-back wins together this year, so I think we've got to be careful of getting too carried away with the Panthers. Beat them, man. Until they start putting wins together, you know, I'm still not convinced that they're going to turn things around here, but we'll see what happens.
And now let's move on to AFL.
Yes.
The mouthpiece of the AFL, Kane Cornes, is at war with North Melbourne right now.
Yes.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
They're refusing to do any interviews with him.
Yeah.
All the players are like, nope, not going to deal with him at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I don't see an end in sight either.
Yeah. The Kangaroos banned him from conducting a pre-game interview with Coach Alistair Clarkson ahead of the club's clash with Essendon last weekend. The Kangaroos felt the attacks from Cornes were personal and vindictive against players Harry Sheasel and Jai Simpkin. Now, what's interesting to me is former Port Adelaide captain Dom Cassisi, who played with Kane Cornes, has actually come out and said that he feels like Cornes is a hypocrite, given that he had very thin skin in his playing days, when if any media pundits criticised him, he couldn't handle the criticism, didn't deal with it very well at all. And this is a quote from Cassisi. He says, knowing Kane, I was drafted in the same year as him. I was with him every day, and us guys understand that if someone said something about Kane's game, he took it worse than anyone. He would literally struggle to come to the club. He wouldn't talk to anyone. He would be flat. And then he says, so we, at the ex-Port Adelaide teammates, sort of look at it and go, what are you doing to this kid? You couldn't really take it yourself when someone criticised you. So isn't it funny how all of a sudden now he's a media pundit and he's the first one to get on the back of players when as a player he couldn't handle the criticism at all himself?
I like one of the things that, like, it's really funny because even other media people aren't supporting him. But one of the things I saw was it's quite common in AFL for specific reporters to be banned by specific clubs. But he's made it a really, really big deal. And there's a bunch of other reporters that are like, bro, this is AFL. We've all been banned at some point in our life.
Yeah.
Like, calm down. When you played, some people got banned from talking to you. Like, just calm down. This happened.
Yeah.
But because he keeps bringing it up and complaining about it, there's no end in sight for it. He's not winning the court of public opinion, and he's not winning the court of AFL pundit opinion.
No.
But it's quite funny, I think, because everybody knows he is the mouthpiece of the AFL. He just continually feeds news articles that support the AFL, hammer players, coaches, clubs, everything, and it's come back to bite him finally.
I think he is really nasty with his criticism. Yeah. I think he goes out of his way to make it personal. I think he goes out of his way to be overly critical of others, of players. Yeah.
And it's like a lot of these like really heavy criticism he does detract from other news stories in the AFL. Like, he goes out and really hammers a club when something else is going on at another club that the AFL doesn't seem to want anyone to see. So the news article becomes, Kane Cornes really hammers this club, really hammers this player. And it's finally come back to bite him. I reckon in the end the AFL will step in and say, bro, you can't ban Kane Cornes. He's got a green light to write whatever he wants because he does what we want him to. But it's funny. Seriously, I love the response from all the other media people that don't work with him. Yeah, man, that happens. All of us have been banned before. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
There's how many clubs are there? There's 19 other clubs you can go do stuff about in interview. So stop your complaining. Yeah, it's quite a funny situation. I saw it pop up and I just started laughing. Over in cricket, one of my favourite topics, drug bans. There's a lot of controversy, and Tim Paine has been pretty vocal about the drug ban for what's his name?
Kagiso Rabada.
Kagiso Rabada,
South African fast bowler.
So he got 1 month.
Yeah.
For cocaine. And Tim Paine can't believe it's only 1 month.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that it was 1 month. So basically, he flew home from the IPL to deal with, quote, an important personal matter, which actually just turned out to be this drug ban that they just swept under the carpet. Was only a 1 month ban, and now he's free to play again.
Yeah.
So they didn't disclose what it was properly. They said it was an important personal matter. They kept it a hush-hush. And then all of a sudden, it's only a 1 month ban. And by the time we all find out about it, the 1 month ban's over. Yeah. And he's even going to be free to play in this World Test Championship against Australia next month. He's even free to play in the IPL.
Yeah, he's gone back to the IPL.
Yeah.
It's really funny, because cocaine is not considered a perform. I was reading about this cocaine in thing because somebody, a rugby union player, recently got 4 years for cocaine. So the way WADA writes it is cocaine is not a performance-enhancing drug, it's an illicit substance, right? And because of that, an in-competition ban or in-competition breach is when you take cocaine on the day of a game. Okay? So one of the things I was reading about, the response was like, the rugby union player said, I made sure I took my last line of coke on at 11:59 p.m. the day before the game. So it's not an in-competition ban. And then they were like, well, from your in-competition sample, you were had enough coke to kill an elephant, basically. So it can't be true because it would have been out of your system by then. And so his one is not an in-competition ban. And that's they're working around it. And some people, I don't agree with, have applauded the decision to make the drugs like cocaine more nuanced for stuff like that. But it's nonsense, honestly. It really is nonsense. Said before, I think they should be allowed to take cocaine. It's not a performance-enhancing drug. They can take coke leading into the match. It's going to screw up their second half. Trust me, when they get the come down, they'll be in the...
That's the thing. That's where this is different to the Jannik Sinner situation.
Yes.
This is recreational drugs. All right, it's a joke that it was kept secret, but it's recreational drugs. It's not performance.
So the 1 month ban technically is the correct ban according to how they have these nonsense rules. But now they have nonsense rules about cocaine drug bans. And it's really hard to keep track of. And the whole thing about hiding it and stuff like that. Some people defend the athletes have a right to privacy. But actually, to be honest about that, I'm all innocent to proven guilty. The more I think about it, the less I think they do. The UFC did that when John Jones got popped again. They decided they wouldn't make any drug offences publicly available, and it would just be the fighter wouldn't fight for a certain amount of period, and you didn't know if it was because they were drug banned or not. Right?
Yeah.
But Sean O'Malley went, I tested positive for weed on his Instagram and got suspended or something. But we actually do have a right to know in a not just us, but bookmakers and stuff. And I hate the fact that I'm defending bookmakers. Bookmakers have a right to know because it affects premiership odds markets. So if he's disappeared for a month back to South Africa for a personal matter, and the bookmaker knows that it's a out of competition cocaine ban he's disputing, they don't need to change the premiership markets as much. You think about it, if it was a rugby league. If Nathan Cleary got popped for an out-of-competition cocaine thing, he'd be banned for a month. The bookmakers could go, that doesn't really change Penrith's situation.
Yeah.
People can keep putting money on Penrith
yeah.
and other teams. Whereas if Nathan Cleary got banned and they knew for an in-competition, so he did a nose beer at 12:01 a.m., he's out for up to 4 years. That changes a lot.
Yeah.
That changes heaps. That means people are going to dump money on anybody who knows is going to dump money on a certain different club, maybe the Broncos, who are the second favourites. I mean, I know this.
Yeah, where gambling is involved, there needs to be complete transparency.
Exactly.
If you're going to allow gambling on your sport, all right,
And they have to allow it.
But you have to be completely transparent if in this sort of a scenario where, you can't just sweep it under the rug and say, oh, it's personal issues when it's a drug incident.
Yeah, exactly. If it was personal issues, he's entirely entitled to his privacy, and the club has to let us know how long he's going to be gone for.
Yeah. But this doesn't, as Tim Paine said, this doesn't fall under the bracket of personal issues.
No, this is not a personal issue. This is he was on the nose beers out at night. And he remembered not to do it on the day he had a game, which is weird in the IPL because they have bloody games every day. But it was out of competition. And
what annoys me is that, players who legitimately say that they're out due to a personal issue, all of a sudden they're going to be, there's going to be a cloud over them because of what Rabada's done here. Said it was a personal issue when it wasn't really a personal issue. So now he's made life harder for any player who legitimately has a personal issue because people are going to go, oh, well, is this a drugs thing? Is this a drugs thing? So that's what upsets me about it.
Yeah.
Rabada's using personal issues to sweep his drug use under the rug.
Exactly. Speaking of drug issues, Jannik Sinner's suspension is over.
Yes.
Ban is over. And
very convenient ban.
Back at his home competition.
Yes, the Italian Open, it's the biggest tournament, the biggest lead-in tournament to the French Open. It's a Masters 1000 event. And he's nice and conveniently coming, but not only has he not missed a major, but he's also conveniently come back for the biggest lead-in event to the French Open. So if there could be, I don't think there could be more of a lay out the red carpet ban, if ever you've seen one. The most convenient ban you've ever seen, wins the Australian Open, gets a 3-month ban where not only he doesn't miss a major, comes back for the French Open, but he even gets back for the main lead-in event to the French Open, which also happens to be his home tournament. Talk about looking after the player who's been banned here.
But he's got hundreds of millions of dollars and he can hire a good lawyer. Unlike, who was it last week?
Max Purcell.
Yeah, Max Purcell.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the wrong name and actually make somebody accused of having a drug ban. But yeah, unlike Max Purcell, he didn't have hundreds of millions of dollars, couldn't afford a really good lawyer, and so ended up with a long ban. Whereas Jannik Sinner was like, well, I do have to play the Italian Open. Of course you do, Jannik. Yeah. Let's get that ban perfectly scheduled for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is the problem now, is that there are still going to be people who think he's clouded because they don't think that he's served the proper punishment. As we said, if it had to come out as soon as he got caught, what he'd done, and if he'd got a proper suspension, like say a 12 or 18 month ban, then you and I would be saying, well, okay, he's done his time now, he's back, all right, we move on, we move forward. The problem is because not only has this ban been so short and so convenient, as I said, falling between the Australian Open and the French Open, but it's also, there's a feeling that it's not long enough at all, and that he hasn't really done his time here. And therefore the clouds will continue to hover over him, and people will continue to say, well, this win that he has is tainted because he didn't properly do his time.
Yeah, and he did. And also to that, he did his time so much later than when he did the. Yeah. And in that time, he won many things.
Yeah, it's wrong on so many levels, so very many levels. And this is going to continue to follow him, unfortunately. And he's going to have to live with that now.
It's for the rest of his career. Everything he wins will be like, yeah, but he's steroids. Bro.
This is the problem. So he would have been better off if they had been fully transparent from the start and he'd served a proper ban.
Yeah.
In the long run, he would have been better off because people would have gone, all right, well, he's done his time. But now he's going to be tarnished, as you said, for the rest of his career.
Think like Melbourne Storm salary cap thing, right? We know they didn't win their premierships that they were rewarding the salary cap, but they've won since then. Yeah, we make fun of them, right? With Melbourne Storm will forever be salary cap cheats. We make fun of them, but they've won since then because they served their time. Yeah. It was all done like proper, very transparent. And then they've won premierships since then. We go, those are fair premierships. And then we jokingly say, yeah, but they probably wanted the salary cap again, right? But with Jannik Sinner, because of all this nonsense, for the rest of his life, every one of his things, like, yeah, but he's a steroid cheat. I'm not joking about that. There's a little asterisk next to his name because he could afford good lawyers And so, how do we know that he's actually not a good steroid? He's not a real steroid cheat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The clouds will continue to hover, and he's going to have to live with her.
But how come Nick Kyrgios doesn't talk about it and then says other insane things?
Yeah, such as that he might be playing at the French Open, which makes no sense whatsoever.
How, bro?
Because he hasn't played since he lost in the second round at Miami. He has only played a handful of times this season. The French Open starts on the 25th of May. He hasn't played a lead-up event. Isn't planning to play a lead-up event. Hasn't even played in the French Open since 2017. That's how much he doesn't like playing there. Then all of a sudden he comes out on social media and says, I've got the quote here. He says, just getting into training, getting ready to head to Paris in 3 weeks. Come on. He's
started training now 3 weeks to prepare for a major that he hasn't played since 2017, alongside the fact that he hasn't played for how many months now?
He hasn't played since the Miami event. But he hasn't been on the court.
He started training now when he has it for a major tournament that he hasn't played in like 10, however many years, 8 years. Alongside the fact that he hasn't played very much at all over the past 4 years. Alongside the fact that last time he did play, he got smashed. Alongside the fact that he played at the Australian Open.
Yeah, right? and lost in the first round. Yeah.
And you think you can just waltz into the French Open?
That's the thing. He wasn't even playing the French Open in years where he was playing a lot of matches and he was prepared and ready to go. All of a sudden he says, I'm going to play with, again, no matches on clay in the lead-up. Doesn't even play in the French Open in years where he does play a lot of matches. His whole career looks like it's over. This makes no sense at all. Obviously, it's just an attention-seeking ploy.
Exactly.
He still wants to feel relevant. He still wants attention. It'd be a complete waste of time for him to play in the French Open. His rankings spiraled out of control. I think his rankings over... it's outside the world's top 600. So, he'll get a wild card if he wants one. But he'd be wasting his time. He's not going to do anything. It's his least... effective surface because he's a big server and big servers traditionally don't do well on the clay.
He's not going to play. He's just stick to his podcast.
Yes.
That's it for the week. We're going to see lots of... I'm really curious about how many sin bins we're going to see this week.
Yes.
Let's see what happens with the Dragons, the Bulldogs game. I don't know how to pick any game this week.
No, it's going to be
Melbourne game.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. State of origin, not too far away. 3 weeks today will be game 1 as well. So that's something to bear in mind here. We're not far away from entering the origin period.
The women's origin happened the first game as well. They're playing 3 and the Blues won their first game. And they're playing...
Yeah, there was a nasty eye gouging incident, but the player got off, escaped suspension. So
second game is on the 15th. Blues can clinch the series, and it's women in league round.
Yeah.
All right then, that's it for the week. Don't forget, for all your CBD needs, go to optimumcbd.store. Orders over $99 get free delivery, and you must be over 18 to order. Follow at SmartB app on social media and all social medias. That's pretty much it. All right. Thanks, man. See you next week.
Thanks, Sean. See you next week.
Thanks, producer. Cheers.